I asked her here to talk about mission, vision, and purpose, and how those things create a better set of sales for a brand. We know, we heard it earlier, we hear it all the time, that millennials and investors both see those things as the absolute minimum ante for getting into the game. So if it's not there yet, or if you want to find out how to deploy it throughout your team and organization for maximum return, this next talk is for you. Please welcome Sarah Bird.
I am honored and thrilled to be here to talk about mission, vision, and purpose. And I don't want you to think, looking at my title slide, that this is going to be a very zen presentation or that the lights are going to dim and you get to take a nap. I'm hoping that you take away from this some nuggets that really help you in your journey to grow your brand. The reason the lighthouse is on this title slide is that you want to think of your brand as a lighthouse that emanates a very strong, bold, bright beacon, so that when your team or your consumers engage with your brand, they know clearly what you stand for. You also want to have a North Star. You need to have a sense of where you're going long term, and by defining that North Star, it so helps you make decisions. So hence those celestial images on my title. I do think having a clear mission, vision, and purpose is very important, whether you're a beverage brand or a food brand. And as Jeff said, my experience spans both, so I'm going to draw from both as I go forward. In terms of my flow, I'm going to start with defining what I mean by mission, vision, purpose, and then we'll take you through some examples, and then give you some examples of how you activate a mission, vision, and purpose, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. In terms of definitions, the mission is what we do now. What business are we in? So you start with that. A vision is who or what we want to be downstream. It's much more future-focused than your mission. Your purpose is your higher purpose. It's also future-focused. It's a way to think about how the brand serves those who are your consumers. Your manifesto is built on your mission, vision, and purpose, and it becomes an internal rallying cry. And what's great about a manifesto is that becomes something that you typically bring to life in a very fun, visual way, and is wonderful for your team. And then last are your core values. Those are your operating principles. They're your core beliefs that really help define your culture. When do you do this? I look at mission, vision, and purpose as very much foundation work. So it's never too early or too late to tackle defining your mission, vision, and purpose. Typically, you do it with an internal team, a small group of people who are intimately familiar with your brand and your product and your business and where you want to go. In terms of the process, I would recommend starting with that. Where do you want to be downstream, a couple years downstream? Where are you headed? Take inventory of your key points of difference. Use the definitions that I just went through to kind of structure your thinking. And then iterate. It takes a fair amount of time, I think, to get this right. And so it's important to iterate. You get your core team to get something that you're delighted with, and then share it out a little bit, get a reaction from your team, and keep tightening up until it's really lock solid. And then ultimately you do share it with your team and really begin to live with it. Your output should be very much future-focused. You want them to be specific so that they force you, when you're making decisions, you can go back and reconcile against that. You want them to be relevant for what's going on in your category or the market today. You want them to be values-based so that they help support the organization. You want them to challenge your business and your team so that it forces everybody to a higher standard. And then ultimately, you want them to be unique and memorable and very engaging. Last kind of overview slide is, who are you doing this for? Is it for your team, for your consumer, some combo of both? I would argue it's mostly for your team and for your business, but your core consumers, as they ultimately peel back the layers on your brand and want to understand the magic of your brand, they will engage and want to see what your mission and vision and purpose are. But I don't think you develop those things thinking about your potential consumer. It's very much for your team and then again that core consumer. I have 4 brands that I've chosen to use as examples, 2 food and 2 beverage. So I'll talk to you about what we did at Annie's. I'll also use Cliff Bar as an example of a brand that I think has done an incredible job with mission, vision, purpose. And then I'll talk about where we are with Bhakti, and also I'll use Rebel. And I've chosen a couple of examples. I'm not going to, there you have those 5 different principles. I'm not going to go through all 5 for each. I've just cherry-picked a couple for each brand to illustrate the points. So starting with Annie's. When Annie began the business, her vision was just to make a clean version of Kraft's Blue Box. And she also wanted to be an example of a company that could do well and do good. But she didn't have a clearly defined mission or vision and principles. And so after the brand had been around for about 15 years, we stepped back and decided to crystallize those things. And they became critical, really an inflection point for the business. They helped us figure out where we were going with our innovation, how we talk to our consumers, the values of the brand. So Annie's mission is that we create a healthier, happier world by spreading goodness through nourishing foods, honest words, and conduct that's forever kind to the planet. So again, us clarifying that really helped guide our commitment to the goodness of our foods, the goodness of our ingredients, that we were going to be transparent in our communications, and that we were going to be focused on sustainability. The vision was, and again, remember, this is longer term. Where are you going long term? We strive to be the brand every family can count on for pure, simple, and delicious foods and nourishing foods at every meal. And we agonized over all these words, but by saying every family, it meant we were going to very much democratize what the products are all about. By choosing to say at every meal, guided where we went from an innovation standpoint. So these, again, became wonderful guardrails and a big inflection point for the brand. The manifesto, remember, this is the rallying cry for the organization. It's a way to, in a really fun way, bring to life your mission, vision, and purpose. So for Annie's, it was a bit of a story. These 6 tiles were kind of chapters of the story. And the idea of getting down to earth or growing up happy, there was a little bit underneath each of these that captured the heart and the spirit of the brand. And as you'll see later when I get to activation, some of these phrases ended up on the walls at the office. And last slide on Annie's is the core values. The company defined 6 core values, which really became the guardrails for how we operated. I'm not going to read through all these, but the highlights are: 1 was talking about the sourcing, the fact that they source only from places and people we trust. Big focus on transparency. Another one was a commitment to social responsibility. 3rd was products that just taste great. 4th, simple, natural, and organic ingredients. The 5th one was talking about how we treat our consumers and our customers and our suppliers with a degree of honesty that we expect of each other. And the last was to operate in a real, authentic way. So you stitch all those together, and it gave the business a really clear sense of where are we going. I'm going to pivot now to Bhakti, which is an 11-year-old brand. I've been working on it for about 2 years, and the first chunk of my energy was focused on the product portfolio. And so this past winter, we started to work on trying to tighten up on the mission, vision, and values of the business. It's very much a values-driven brand to start with, and Bhakti means devotion in Sanskrit. And Brooke, our founder, was focused on bold ingredients. So we had a lot to work with, but it was distilling that into guardrails. So we crystallized that by saying we're devoted to being bold in our products, our business, and our approach to giving back. That then led to us defining a purpose, which, again, remember, this is the impact on those that we serve, to encourage people to slow down, enjoy life's bold flavors, and find their own powerful way of living Bhakti's value of devotion. And then from a manifesto standpoint, again, this is that internal rallying cry. The manifesto for Bhakti is that we are a force to be reckoned with in how we live our lives, run our business, source and create our products, and impact the world. We're proud to be woman-founded and led, a certified B Corp, a powerhouse beverage brand, and a lifestyle company devoted to paying goodness forward. Chai is our heart, and Bhakti is our soul. We believe in sharing life's simple rituals and helping others live their best life. Again, a really rich manifesto for everybody in the organization to embrace and understand where we're going. And last on Bhakti is our core values. Again, what are our beliefs? And we bucketed these under this theme of devotion, which is what Bhakti means. So first focuses on uncompromising taste, the fact that we're going to make incredibly good, delicious tasting beverages. Second, a commitment to social action. And then the third is this sense of drinking in life and living it boldly. Pivoting to Cliff, it's interesting. Having had a long career in marketing, people always say, what's a brand that you really look up to and respect? And Patagonia was always my example of a brand who has just best practices in terms of the quality of their products and just how they operate. I now hold Cliff in that same esteem. I think that they, in absolutely everything they do, they are doing the right thing, and they're so focused on doing the right thing. So whether it's their products or how they treat their team or how they source their ingredients, it's really just a very high bar. And I think if you read Cliff's mission, it will give you a sense of why they're so good. So quick read it. We are working to run a different kind of company, the kind of place we like to work, that makes the kind of food we like to eat, that strives for a healthier, more sustainable world, the kind of world we'd like to pass on to our children. I think that's pretty inspiring stuff, and I'd argue it comes through in absolutely everything that they do. Their values, again, are very tight, very clear operating principles that leave no question about how they're going to operate. They commit to reducing their environmental footprint in everything they do, from field to final product. They put a stake in the ground about their foods, that they're going to be made from sustainable organic ingredients, that they're going to be baked with clean, renewable energy, that they're going to be packed in an environmentally friendly package, and they're going to be delivered by transportation that does not pollute. So what a clear set of guardrails or a box for them to operate within. I think for anybody on their team or anybody that lifts up the tent and tries to figure out what's going to Cliff, that's a clear sense of what they're all about. Finally on Cliff, most companies have one bottom line. Maybe in our space, a lot of us have 3 bottom lines. But Cliff has what they call their 5 bottom lines. They call them their aspirations instead of bottom lines. But they're very focused on sustaining their business, their brands, their people, their communities, and the planet. And the reason they've chosen these 5 is that they said that when making a decision, they try and balance against all those competing bottom lines. And they liken these 5 aspirations to the spoke of a wheel, which they assert keeps the company in balance as it moves forward by continuing to focus on these 5 aspirations. My last example is Rebel, which is a brand that's built from a cause as opposed to a cause. A brand built from a cause as opposed to a brand that's chasing a cause. So Rebel is very tightly aligned around an organization called Not for Sale, and they're committed to giving 2.5% of their net sales to Not for Sale. So their purpose reinforces that connection. Their purpose is to create real food products unparalleled in taste, function, and nutrition that support a unique business model with direct impact in the fight against human trafficking. So very clear alignment with that cause. And their core values reinforce that. They've got standards that talk about the quality of their ingredients and taste. And then they've got a supplier ethos that talks about their commitment to working with suppliers that are going to prevent trafficking from going on. So with that, I want to switch to activation. You've now done this work, you've defined your mission and your vision and your purpose and have a great manifesto and whatnot, but what do you do with all that? So I have a couple of examples from each of these brands that will help you understand how you can activate this. First is office decor. This is very simple, but it's an easy way to take some of the language from your mission, vision, purpose and bring it to life. So on the left, you've got a beautiful wall that Cliff Bar has in their relatively new manufacturing facility in Idaho. So they've got the words of their purpose on that wall, and it's just a beautiful portrayal or bringing that to life. The pictures on the right of this slide are from Annie's office, and you'll see some of the words from from their manifesto on the wall. So when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is create a garden of goodness. And then there's another wall that says grow up happy. And then the mission and vision are also carried within around the walls of the office. So simple stuff, but an easy way to make sure your team gets what your greater good is. In terms of product, another way to activate your mission and your MVP is you can certainly put your certifications on the front of your package. So if you're organic or you're non-GMO or you're fair trade, make sure you take credit for all those good things that you're doing with your product. You'll see on the left, remember back when I talked about Annie's mission and the fact that we really anchored in on this idea of goodness. So now on each Annie's box, it talks about made with goodness, and you have the things that are the goodness inside called out. And then the picture on the lower right there is Rebel's bottle, where on the back of every bottle, they talk about their commitment to not for sale and to stop human trafficking. And then on the right, you'll see just a snippet I grabbed from Annie's website, which shows the innovation and the fact that back to the vision and the commitment to being having products for every meal. The long list of where that brand has gone reflects the company's vision of having products for every meal. And then the little box is on the lower right there is something that was launched at Expo West, which is a limited edition SKU, which reinforces the brand's commitment to operating sustainably and transparency. Another area where you can bring your MVP to life is with your cause and your giving activities. So you can create your own programs. So at Annie's, there's a Grants for Gardens program and a scholarship program for people studying sustainable ag. Cliff Bar has their Family Foundation, and one of the programs that they sponsor is Seed Matters, which is focused on on organic seed availability. And then at Bhakti, we have a program called Gita, which is our giving, where we're focused on programs for women and girls in the areas where we source our ingredients. You also, though, the bottom row on this slide are NGOs that if you don't want or don't have the horsepower to create your own program, it's great to sign up with an NGO. You could support something like Food Corps, or join the Organic Trade Association, which is carrying the water for all of us that play in the organic industry. Support them in terms of policy work. So, or you can support, something. Find your version of not for sale. Transparency is all about giving your MVP teeth. As you probably have all heard the adage, you can't manage what you can't measure. So you've defined your MVP. Make sure you've got some way to track it. So you'll see on the left of this slide and in the middle these elegant books that both Cliff and Annie's use to, they're their reports basically. Annie's is a sustainability report, and Cliff has their 5 aspiration report. So this is the cover of their 2017 versions. I'm imagining for many of you, certainly for us at Bhakti, this is way beyond where we are at this point in time. But you can be like Rebel, where they've got a map on their website which shows where they source their ingredients from and has a great story about that. Very simple. Or Bhakti is a B Corps, and that B Corps requires us to have a certain set of standards about how we operate. So you can choose how you bring that transparency to life and demonstrate you're walking the walk. And then in terms of team, again, I would say Cliff and Annie's are on one end of the spectrum in terms of what they do for their team to walk the walk, where they've got in-house gyms and classes, and they give, if you drive the right kind of car or you get a bike to commute to work, you get some incentives. If you don't have the ability to go to Bright on that kind of thing, you can certainly do something as simple as a volunteer day or a volunteer afternoon. So take your team to the food bank, take your team to clean up a trail or clean up the waterfront, something that connects your organization to this idea that of your what your mission, vision, and purpose are all about. I also had the pleasure of meeting the women that started Hum last night, and one of them has the title of Chief Cultural Chief Culture Angel. She's the head of HR, but it's Chief Culture Angel, which I thought, again, what a simple way of saying what's important in terms of your mission, vision, and values. And if talking about your commitment to people, calling your HR person an angel, what a great way of bringing that to life. Last piece on activation, is the consumer communication. Do you shout about this to your consumers, or do you let them discover it? And I would argue your MVP is very much in your brand or your company's DNA. It's not something you lead with. It's all about how you operate, how you treat your team, where you source your ingredients from. At Annie's, we used to say it's about doing the right thing when no one's looking. And I think that that's very true. Again, this is how you operate, not what you lead with. On this page, I have examples of how some of these other brands have done it. Annie's has at Expo, this was their booth, which had their commitment to sustainability. Luna has on their homepage, Cliff Bar, talking about their commitment to equal pay for women, which supports their community. And then Rebel had some social media. Last slide. How do you know your MVP is working? You've done all this great work. How do you know it's working? Back to that North Star and Lighthouse. On the North Star front, it's going to facilitate your decision-making. Execution should flow freely if you've done a great job with this. It serves as your internal moral compass. And then back to that idea of being a lighthouse, consumers get it and your team gets it. What your brand stands for is so much in the DNA and the beacon of your business. So that's it. So thank you. Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Sarah,
thank you.
Thank you. Here, let's have a seat.
All right.
And I think it's really important to think about what a brand stands for. There have been some fairly, I don't want to call them cynical, but some questions coming in about what distributors tend to think about manifestos and meaning.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can address that.
It's a great question. So KE, for example, is a B Corp. And so they actually just sent out something where they're looking for 5 companies that best align with their values. So they had us fill out a survey. So I think some distributors, care deeply about those things.
And do you perceive a rising number of them?
Yes.
Again, are we starting to see cultural change moving into the business world?
I would say yes, that there's increasing interest. Again, the reason you do this is to help you grow as a business. And if these are the principles and the guardrails that help you operate, then and distributors, anybody in your supply chain is going to want you to have those things well defined because it will help you grow and be successful.
When's it most appropriate to kind of formalize these guardrails, to move from, well, this is what we're about, to this is officially what we're about?
As I said in that slide, I don't think it's ever too early or too late to do it. So I think if you're starting out a business, think about these things today or in your first year. Or if you're working on a business that's been going for a while, still step back, take an audit of where you are, and make sure you've got that clarity and what you stand for and where you're going. So
you told me that you choose each word really carefully. One of the questions that came in is how you balance, growing and selling a business and a product, kind of based on this concept of Bhakti. How when you create a brand, eventually you have to worry that you're co-opting whatever the brand's named for. So is there, how do you sort of avoid mission backlash?
That's a great question because we just had a big brouhaha about that. And I think Bhakti is not about cultural appropriation. It's about taking a very authentic Indian product and making it accessible to people. So I think it gets back to our values as a company, and we're trying to democratize something as opposed to steal an idea.
One last question. What kind of resources help in terms of implementing it across a company? Is this something you can sort of hire a project for?
I think it can be internally driven, but I think there are people who are experts in doing this. So both with the Annie's project and the Bhakti project, I work with a wonderful small consulting group out of Boulder called Berry Strategy that helped us just guide us through that process. So they're not driving it, but they're guiding. And I know you know of other resources that do that. And then we also partner with a group called Vermilion that helped take those words and then brought them to life in that beautiful manifesto. So I do think it's helpful to have some extra horsepower if you can afford it, and it doesn't have to be a huge spend, but somebody who can really shape what you're trying to do.
All right. It's tough ROI to immediately imagine, but long term, it is the ROI.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.